Hey guys, how are you? It's Brad Sundberg in the studio with MJ. It's been a while. I haven't done a live interview in a couple months, and I'm so excited. I'm here with Hayden Rose. Hayden is the owner of Serengeti Ranch in Southern Oregon. Hayden and I crossed paths many, many times at a little place called Neverland Valley Ranch, owned by Michael Jackson. I think Hayden's just somebody. I talked to Hayden for the first time in many years just a few days ago, and we started swapping names and stories. And I just said, "Stop, stop, stop!" I want to kind of capture this and just share it with people that are curious about Michael and people that knew Michael. So Hayden, thank you, welcome, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. By the way, the connection between me and Hayden is Big Al.
Big
Big
Al.
Al kind of connected us. Well, let's roll back because I just want to hear a little bit about you, how you got started in the industry, working with animals. Who are you?
Well, so as a young man, I wanted to be a veterinarian, like so many young people, I guess. I was fascinated with animals from the very get-go, from the time I was old enough to even open my mouth. I always said that I
Hmm.
wanted to be an animal doctor. I was always running up to the stray dog and the cat, and putting myself in probably harm's way at that age. My mom was always worried because I was just running right up to big dogs and wrapping my arms around them, and just being a child. But I was very fascinated with animals from the very get-go, to the point where I was even keeping pet bees, pet caterpillars, whatever it was.
Okay.
I'm friends with bees and handle them and have them on my hand, and then people around me would try the same thing. The young kids around me would try the same thing and get stung. And for some reason, I just had a demeanor that just jived with animals. I don't know how or why, but that was my gift, I guess. Um, and so over the years, I realized I was extremely ADD, ADHD as a child.
Okay.
Big surprise. And I wasn't able to focus. And it wasn't long into high school that I realized that I was wasting my time and everybody else's time thinking I was going to make it into vet school or make it through vet school. Um, so I knew I wanted a career with animals. I didn't know what that was going to be. I was, as a young man in high school, from the very get-go, I was in every program and club that had the word animal in it. I was in FFA, I was in the 4-H, anything that had the word animal in it, I was chasing it down and trying to basically consume my life with the animal world. I was very into science. I loved animal science. I even in a weird way was big into biology as a child, even though I was not getting good grades. I was very fascinated with it.
Hmm.
And anything that in nature was all about me. I wanted to chase that dream. So I was in a regional occupational program at 15 years old for animal care, and I was working in some vet clinics, working
And
with
this
some
was
really.
in Oregon?
No, this was in well, this is actually started out in Northern California.
Okay.
And I was friends with, or my family was friends with, a famous veterinarian named Dr. Murray Fowler over at UC Davis Medical Center, which is a world-renowned vet school. And that's where I had dreamt that that was where I was going to wind up. And then
Huh.
I realized it wasn't going to happen. So I started following around some of these veterinarians like a puppy dog. And I just stayed in their face. I was constantly getting these exciting opportunities. My parents were at the time they got into llamas and alpacas back in the 80s when the market was strong. And that was a really big, that boom lasted a number of 20 years and then fell flat on its face. But
Hmm.
for a while there, llamas and alpacas were a big deal. And we became the second largest breeders of llamas and alpacas in the nation for about 15 consecutive years. And during that time, I met some people that had a camel ranch and had camels, and I knew somebody that had an ostrich ranch and had ostriches. I met a gentleman that had an elephant over at Fresno Zoo. Um, and I started hanging out with a lot of those people. And then I met some people with some tigers and lions, and that's how it all started. And then in the regional occupational program that I was in, some people brought in some chimpanzees into my class. And they actually were in the movie industry. They started out at one of those wildlife parks,
Sure.
and they went on their own. They started doing film work with their chimpanzee family. And it turns out that those folks lived real close to my home at the time when I was a young man. And I found out where they lived by accident, and I started stalking them. Go figure. Uh, and I at first they're like, oh, everybody thinks they want to do this. It's not fun work. It's dirty work. It's dangerous. People think it's glamorous. It's not. It's a lot of scraping of monkey poop.
Right.
And they try to talk me out of it, but I was not that easy to talk out of it. I kept showing up on their doorstep like a puppy dog and bugging the heck out of them. I started washing their windows, painting their house, cleaning their rain gutters, raking their yard.
I love it.
And I just was relentless. I didn't leave them alone. I was really just very interested in doing this, working with the animals, and they kept pushing me away and pushing me away because they knew that 90% of the people were going to not stick it out. But I was way more, they just didn't know me yet. I
Right.
was I was determined, and I wasn't letting it go. Uh, anyway, so they one day it just happened to be that they needed one of their primates had busted one of the welds on a gate, and they didn't have a welder at the time, and they needed a welder. I think it was on a Sunday, and they were freaking out like, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" And I'm like, "Well, I welded all through high school. I weld. That's what I
Right.
I love to weld." So I brought my welder over there and I fixed their gate. And it wasn't long after that that they were like, "Well, why didn't you tell us you can weld? That's great. We got a big cage we need welded and built." So I went to building a chimp cage for them. And at that point, they gained trust in me and realized I was not a flake and I wasn't a wimp about getting dirty, and that I was a hard worker. And they started giving me some opportunities. And those opportunities were amazing. At 15 and a half years old, I got to go work on a film in Southern California. They took me to Canada for a couple months during summer break to work on some commercials. Did an American Tourister commercial, I think, when I was like almost 16 years old.
Okay.
Um, and I just stayed on it, and soon they started trusting us and trusting me enough, and they got to know my family. And my parents were at that time divorced, but my mother, they liked my mom, and so they had a couple of baby chimps born at the same time. And they said, "Well, you think your mother would let you raise one of the baby chimps in the house?" And I was like, "Of course she would. I'm sure she would." So my mother, of course, she's a little bit like me. She was all excited about it. She was, "Yeah, let's do it." So we raised one of the chimps in the house for a couple of years. And yeah, I was super immersed in this whole thing. And
And you were still
um,
living, this is still in Northern California, what, near Davis or?
well, Sacramento area, but up in the
Okay.
mountains, not in
Okay.
Sacramento, outside in the mountains. Um, so that's kind of how it started. I make a joke. I tell people that, they go, "How in the heck did you wind up in this?" I'm like, "Well, I kept burning the food at Taco Bell, and they told
Right.
me I would do anything." So I proved them. Um, so it just blossomed from there. Working with the chimpanzees, I did a lot of that and learned a lot, and it was a really amazing experience. But I really wanted more.
Okay.
And it's happened. We worked on a film in Southern California called Beastmaster with Mark Singer, a real top-notch it's
Okay.
just a little bit of a notch above pornography, I'd say.
All right.
um, it was a great experience. I got to work on my first real film with other animals, and there was a whole bunch of animals on that film. There was tigers, and I mean, there was everything on there. We had a ferret, and I think that we had, gosh, it's been a long time, but I think we had a wolf on there. We had a raven on there. We had lots of different animals, tigers, and so I wound up working on that film, and it turned out that the gentleman that owned that ranch down there with the animals, those other animals, um, I started hanging out with him and talking to him a little bit, and he said, "Well, I'm short staffed. If you want to learn more, you can come down to Southern California and work with me." And so I spoke to the people with the chimp family. I said, "Hey, look, I really love the chimpanzees. I want to work with you still, but I want to learn more." And they said, "Well,
Okay.
we want you to do that." So I moved down south and
No,
jumped in first. And within a matter of weeks, the gentleman owned that ranch down there had a big problem with some of his other trainers, and they all kind of went to war against each other over politics. And he got left with nobody in a blink of an eye. And so he said to me, he goes, "Hey, it's a sink or swim. I'm going to have to throw you in head first. I don't have time to train you. You already have
wow.
some experience, but you're going to have to go in head first with all my big cats." He had lions and tigers and bears and leopards, and he had just all these animals. And he says, "You're just going to have to learn real fast.
How,
It's a
how
sink or
old,
swim."
how old were you?
At this point, I'm, what, 19, about 19 years old.
Okay. You're
So I
just
went up
out of high
managing.
school.
Yeah, I wound up managing that company for right away. I started training with him, and we built a great relationship over the years. And it wasn't long that him and his wife were traveling to Africa for months at a time. And they had a daughter, so I wound up running the ranch and taking care of his kid when he was out of town, and taking care of all his animals. And he trusted me with the keys to the city. He trusted me 100%. And
Wow.
I never put down, and I just did a good job and kept my nose clean and stayed on track and built that relationship with the animals and with him. And so I wound up working with all these big cats at this point now. And about a year after that, he had had a ton of elephant experience, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about me getting an elephant? I have a lot of experience from the past." And he was circus way back when he was a young man.
Okay.
And he goes, "I really want to get an elephant. I think we should do that." And I said, "Well, that I've never been. I've been around. Well, I shouldn't say that. I was around an elephant once before from the guy I told you about that had an elephant in Fresno, but it was very limited.
Right.
Limited.
Right.
Um, I'm like, well, I don't have really much elephant experience, but I love elephants. They're the most amazing creature on the planet. I think that's great." And he had the facility to do it, so he went ahead and got the licensing, the permitting, and got this little African elephant named Nellie. And gosh, I'd never been so in love with anything in my entire life. I was so enthralled with that creature. I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't get enough of her. And then I was like, she needs a friend.
Right.
So you can't keep her by herself. She's social. And the guy that was working for her said, "Well, I'd love to get another one, but they're a lot of money, and I don't have the money for two right now." So I said, "Well, if somebody was accidentally able to come up with the money and they were able to get another elephant, would that be okay to use your facility and your licensing?" He goes, "Absolutely." So I had a condominium at the time in town to when I was working there. I bought this condo with some money that I had, and I had a little equity. And so I convinced Bank of America to give me a loan for $60,000 to uh, basically upgrade my condominium, and I upgraded it with an elephant. So that's kind of, I'm sure we know what other people have gone through admitting this stuff. I'm probably going to have a Bank of America coming after me now for fraud,
Not at
but
all.
I paid the loan off. So Bank of America, if you're listening, the loan was paid off, and
But
thank you for help. But yes, I bought an elephant with that money at 21 years old. I think I just
you're
turned
and
20.
and you're living like in San Fernando Valley?
Well, no, up in the mountains above that is the Palmdale, Lancaster, and then there's a town called Canyon Country,
Sure.
and
The
it's one of the
909.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, that one's 661. It used to be
Okay.
805, 661.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, that's how that happens. Closer to Valencia, Magic Mountain area,
Oh, okay.
uh,
Of course. Okay.
but a little further up in the mountains.
Got it.
Anyway, bought an elephant. Now we have two African elephants, and I just was happier than a pig in poop. I guess they're in mud, whatever. Um, but yeah, that's how that whole thing became. And I wound up having a hippopotamus, not somewhere in there in that time frame.
How do you buy a
Beagle.
hippopotamus?
Well, same guy. He decided to get hippopotamus for the movie industry, and he got this little pygmy hippo. And I thought
Okay.
that's cool, but she needs a friend. So I bought one. So we had two pygmy hippopotamuses.
So early 20s, you're growing your little animal menagerie.
Exactly.
And so now you're still working pretty much full time with this guy.
Yeah, I was working full time with him. And so he was friends with Martin Dennis, Dr. Marty Dennis, which
Okay.
he friends with Dr. Marty Dennis because I was working with all of them. And Marty and I became pretty close over the years. I just really, I just always had a thing for veterinarians because they were in that saving animals, and that to me was where my passion was. So
Right.
any person that had the knowledge to save an animal from dying or help it and take pain from it, well, I'm married to a veterinarian now, so there you go.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, so my wife's a veterinarian of 25 years.
Hmm.
But I just was really, anytime there was a veterinarian around, I just really wanted to gain as much knowledge from that person as possible.
Right.
And so I chased Marty Dennis around a lot in between doing film work. And he started asking me to help him and assist him with certain things, like he did Siegfried and Roy's cats. So
Now
I was
was
constantly going back and forth to Siegfried and Roy's to work on their animals.
now was Marty, I thought he was based in Vegas. Was he based in LA?
No, Mark Dennis was actually based in Acton Canyon Country, or just above Canyon Country, Agua Dulce, actually.
Okay. I always
And
just
so that's in the
associated
same
him
area.
with I just
Yeah.
associated him with
Well,
Siegfried and
because he
Roy.
was always in Vegas. He was always in Vegas. He was
Right.
back and forth constantly, and he had a lot of clients, a lot of wealthy clients, a lot of celebrity clients like Mr. Jackson and Siegfried and Roy and stuff like that.
The MJ thing, how did that start? Did you start at Neverland or at one of the shoots?
Well, a little of both. I'd already been to Neverland a few times working with Marty Dennis with the animals,
Okay.
and then through Brian McMillan, the guy that I was working for, his company was quite large at the time, and he came up pretty highly recommended in the film industry. He had big full page ads. He in the what we call the LA 411, which is the big directory for film animals
Yep.
or for all anything film. But as far as we were one of the first ones that came up on the first big full page ads, and so he's
Right.
getting a lot of. So we started building a relationship with the people, the producers and directors that actually were doing a lot of Mr. Jackson's videos. Um, so I wound up working on the videos outside of being friends with Marty Dennis and outside of being already to Neverland. I already had that relationship. I was already getting calls through the company I was working for to supply animals for some of these music videos.
Okay.
So I went at the time. I also did Jackson American Dream, which was about the family, and the whole Jackson, everything that that basis about
Right.
their whole life story. Um, so yeah, so that's how it happened. I was also involved with bringing Gypsy the elephant, which was purchased for Michael as a gift from the late great Elizabeth Taylor, who was a
Yep.
wonderful
Yep.
person. Really got to love that woman. She was amazing. Not even knowing her, she was amazing, but getting to know her was even more amazing. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I met Elizabeth in her later years of life when she had her health issues.
Right.
Um, but anyway, she had purchased this elephant, Gypsy, an old Asian elephant from Michael, as a gift, which was really an exciting thing to see because I mean that's quite a gift to give somebody, and to see the relationship between Elizabeth and Michael was pretty amazing as well. When Elizabeth bought Gypsy from Michael, Michael did not have an elephant barn or elephant facility yet, so it
Right.
was kind of right before the horse. But she had purchased Gypsy, so Gypsy needed a place to live while they built the facilities, and
Okay.
so she wound up living with us over at the ranch that I was working at, and I was taking care of her, and so I was involved with that. And then when she got over to Neverland, I was involved with helping get the facilities ready for them and basically consulting and saying, okay, this is how the elephant corrals need to be built. This is the type of material needs to be used. The barn should be at least this size and this height and needs this kind of insulation and this kind of drainage.
Yep.
And so it took a couple of years or a little over a year to build that facility. And I had Gypsy in during that time. Um, and then when the facility was ready, we brought Gypsy over there and got her comfortable living there. And so we were involved with that whole process. And then somewhere along that line, Mr. Jackson decided he needed more elephants. And at that time, the guy that I was working for had a connection in Africa, and there was two young elephants that needed a place to go. And he basically made that happen for Michael. And that was Baba and Ali. Ali being the little bull who is now at
Right.
Jackson Zoo in Florida, and Baba, who I have had since the closing of Neverland Ranch.
Do you remember the first time? I'm going to ask a two-part question. The first time that you went to Neverland, and the first time that you met or had a little chat with Michael.
The first time I ever went to Neverland, I would say I was probably 22 years old. Well, it was when the ranch was first purchased, and I don't remember what year that was, so I'm going
Uh,
to be wrong probably.
well,
It used to be the
87,
Figaro Mountain Ranch. Huh?
87, 88 is kind of when things were
I
kicking
want to
into
say
gear.
88, 89.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that, so forgive me. But I think he'd owned the ranch for about a year, but a lot of the facilities had not been built. It was just
Right.
basically this beautiful ranch called Figaro Mountain Ranch in Los Olivos.
Yep.
And I went there. And it was home was there and stuff, but the train station was just being built. And that's when I met Big Al actually when he
Okay.
was involved with the train being built and all that. And forgive my memory and the numbers
You're
or
good.
the years I went off a little bit, so I apologize for that. But I want to say 89, 90 maybe. It's hard to say.
Okay.
I can't remember. But that was the first time I went, and I had not met Mr. Jackson then. I just was on the ranch the first couple times. And then I remember we all went to Disneyland. He took us all to Disneyland because he wanted to, when they were building all the rides and all that, he wanted everybody to go that was involved. And he wanted everybody to see what Disneyland looked like because he wanted to mimic a lot of the rides and the way things were done, like the gardens. He loved the flower gardens and the way that things were groomed there. So he brought a huge group of people in a tour bus, and I got to ride on the tour bus to Disneyland. We spent the whole day there walking around, getting a behind the scenes, walking around, seeing how things were maintained and maintenance and how they were built,
Hold,
and
this is the
it was
first time.
really fun.
This is the first time I've ever heard this. So
Well,
was Michael there?
Yeah, he was there.
So
Yeah. In fact,
Michael was your tour guide at Disneyland.
pretty much, yeah. He would run off and disappear a little bit and talk to some other people. But yeah, he was in and out of the conversations and disappear for a little bit with somebody to see something else or talk to someone else. But yeah, he was there. He was kind of like the tour guide, and he kept saying, "I love the way they did the flower gardens around the train station. I love
Right.
the way." One of the things that was really funny is that started a big thing with us is he loved the way that they cross raked all of the around all the gardens and stuff. There was these sand gardens and all this stuff, and they cross raked, which meant they took the rake and raked in one direction one way, and then when they got to the end, they raked the other direction, and it
Okay.
made these really neat lines. It's almost like what do you call the Asian gardens, the sand gardens,
Yeah, yeah, the Zen gardens.
Zen garden, you know? It was kind of like that, but it was really it seemed ridiculous in the beginning. I was like, well, that's kind of ridiculous. But after doing it a few times and seeing what it looked like, the results were amazing. And
Sure.
did that there, and he just loved that because it looked so neat and clean and uniform. And
Okay.
that was one thing about Mr. Jackson. He loved uniformity. It was very
Yep.
important for things to be uniform. He liked things to be completed, and he didn't want things left half done. He was very meticulous. The results were amazing, and he wanted his grounds to look when his guests came. He wanted it to look perfect, and so I get it. You know, it was a neat idea. But those are the types of things that came from Disneyland. You know what I mean? The
All
reason
the
I brought that
details.
those little details were things that he saw at Disneyland. And go, that's what I want my place to look like, and it was that was one of the first times I think I really was around him very much. Was when he started building.
I mean, I don't mean to be hung up on this, but Michael and I talked about Disneyland countless times, but I never got to go. I never got to go to Disneyland with him. So the fact that he had a little field trip and left me out, I'm a little jealous. But
Uh, Sorry you got left out. There might have been a reason. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't. I mean, there were so many people involved with this thing. I'm sure he just wasn't thinking about
no, I
who am I
know.
inviting. It was kind of like I don't even know how I got piled into the darn thing really, but it was kind of a neat experience.
So I mean, it's
I was even qualified to even go, but I was excited to go.
so it's a busload of basically employees and contractors from Neverland.
Contractors, yeah, there was a bunch of the garden maintenance guys from the ranch wound up going so they could
What
see
a
how his flower gardens, and he
what?
basically wanted to mimic Disneyland because it made him very happy. He loved that
Sure,
place. And I get it, it's pretty wild when you go there to Disneyland. I can't imagine a person that's maybe from a foreign country sees Disneyland. It's got to be completely mind-boggling.
right.
It's a very unique place, and so Mr. Jackson wanted his ranch to be extremely unique.
Well, and Michael's train station looked remarkably like the train station at Disneyland,
It's
and
almost identical. Yeah, it's almost identical. Yeah.
ama- amazing.
And that's how I met Big Al. I think I talked to Big Al for hours on the ride over there because it was a long ride to Disneyland from Los Olivos.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, it was really, really an amazing experience. So you asked me that, and then you said, or you asked me the first time I met Mr. Jackson. I think, and that's probably when I'd say
Okay.
that's when I lived very far away. I was living in Acton at the time. It was 3.5 hour drive, and that's
Wow.
hauling butt all the way up the 101 to get to Los Olivos. There's some parts of the story we've left out, but I wound up keeping my elephant Susie with Baba, Michael's elephant, after we had to euthanize Gypsy because
Hmm.
Gypsy became so old and so decrepit that she couldn't walk anymore and she was in pain and she was falling down. And it was cruel at that point to keep her alive any longer. She has a
Right.
nice, long life. Michael gave her the best of the best. The facilities were spectacular, the best food, the best nutritional supplements, best veterinary care, best everything that could be bought for that elephant.
Right.
But at a certain point, she could not carry on any longer. She was just too darn old and broken
Right.
down at that point. So we needed to euthanize Gypsy, unfortunately. And at that time, or before when I was not there, unfortunately, the management decided to place Ali, the little bull, over at Jacksonville Zoo because they were worried that they weren't going to be prepared to handle a bull elephant. A bull elephant is a big deal
Yeah.
to care for. It requires special facilities. They, at some point, with me not involved, because I would have probably fought that a little bit, decided that Ollie would go to Jacksonville. But then when Gypsy was euthanized, that left Baba by herself.
Hmm.
And elephants shouldn't be by themselves. And so I had a relationship with Michael and Neverland, the management at Neverland. And I said, hey, what if I bring my elephant Susie to live here at Neverland and be with Baba as a companion elephant? And Michael loved the idea. Everybody loved the idea. And so I moved Susie over there, and I was going back and forth every week to Neverland for
Right.
years, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't remember how long, traveling back and forth. And I was also still doing film work with my elephant Susie. So I was constantly coming to the ranch, picking up Susie, taking her away for anywhere from 5 hours to 24 hours,
Right.
doing a job or so, and then coming back to Neverland and dropping her back off, and then going home back to Acton. But after a while, I started realizing, it's just going to be better for me to stay on the ranch when I can. I had a family, so I wasn't going to stay there permanently because my family would not like that. I
Right.
was married with a small child. Um, so I was trying to go home as much as I could, but I would spend at least 3 days a week at Neverland. And I started staying in what's called the ranch house. There's
Yep.
also called the Hill House. I stayed in both those homes, but mostly the ranch house. Um, and because I was there overnight a lot, and there was at a certain point there was limited staff, especially at night, because they were trying to the management was trying to uh, basically protect Mr. Jackson's finances by not having too much staff on all the time. That ranch cost an insane amount of money to run. I mean,
Right.
absolutely insane. I remember back in the early 90s, the electric bill, I saw the electric bill, it was $27,000 a month.
Wow.
That's going to be in the hundreds of thousands today when you
Yeah.
look at, in today's economy. Um, 27,000 a month. And that was on a really good month,
Right.
just for electricity only. So the bills were insane, and they were trying to protect him, I think, his finances. So they were letting a lot of people, giving him limited hours, and there was a limited staff. And so there was many nights that I would stay the night there, and it was only me and one security guard. And I wasn't on payroll at that time. I would clock out. Obviously, I was on not even really on a time card. I was a consultant, so I would just bill accordingly. But
Right.
when I was going back and forth, just to be with my elephant or to help out, and I was taking her to do jobs, I wouldn't charge Mr. Jackson. I would just stay there for 3 days on my dime.
Right.
And it just saved me fuel and time to have to not drive back and forth. So I was on the ranch a lot. And it was a lot of times after hours on Saturdays and Sundays when there was very few people there,
Sure.
night teams overnight. Well, Mr. Jackson at that point, I think he had his children and stuff, but they were young. They were very young. And I think he
Right.
needed an adult to talk to sometimes. And I don't know how it wound up happening, but he started confiding me in a little bit and having me hang out with him in the nighttime. I don't want to get too detailed because some of this stuff might be personal and I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt his
Sure.
legacy, his name. But I sensed that the man was struggling a little bit with all the stuff he was going through. He was going through some really hard times with all the garbage that was going on with the media, attacking his character, and the people that were attacking his character and saying that he was all these horrible things. Um, he seemed a little stressed and unhappy at that point. Like I said, finances were a little bit tough, even though he's wealthy as all can be. His
Mhm.
overhead and the attorney's fees were just killing him. So Mr. Jackson started. He had a tough time sleeping. Let's just say he was a little bit of an insomniac at this point,
Sure.
and he would be up at all hours of the night, fretting and stressing, and looking for some sort of outlet to do something, to hang out with somebody. And I was, I thought I was never a fan of Mr. Jackson, not because I thought he wasn't. He was an amazing, incredible artist.
Right.
It just wasn't my type of music when I was
I hear.
growing up. So I didn't even really know much of his albums other than what I'd worked on. I'd never really been to his concerts. I'd never bought any of his albums. I hate to admit, but that's just a fact. It just
Right.
wasn't my music. But I thought he was an amazing, incredible human being. Um, but I wasn't starstruck. I wasn't interested in his fame or his fortune or anything like that. I just looked at him as a normal, average guy that was going through a tough time. And I think because I treated him that normal and I wasn't really his employee and I wasn't really his friend, he somehow started realizing that I'm on the ranch all night long because he saw me out there and he started talking more to me and then he said, "Hey, you want to go play some video games?" And because he had an amazing arcade, you know that.
Right.
Amazing video card. In fact, you might have done the sound system in there too, did you not?
I did everything except the arcade because it was so
Okay.
noisy in there. It didn't need anything.
Yeah. So the arcade was amazing. So, here I am, such a surreal thought these days. All the things that, in fact, I told you this before, is you don't really realize what you're involved with or what you're doing until it's over with.
Right.
I never
Yep.
took time to think how surreal and how weird and how strange that I'm actually sitting here playing video games with Mr. Jackson in the middle of the night, just him and I. And then that blossomed into like, hey, I'm not able to sleep, which I'm always getting up early in the morning and needing to sleep, but he's, 2, 3 in the morning. Let's go watch a movie at the theater. And so here I am sitting next to Mr. Jackson watching movies at 2, 3 in the morning. And this
Yep.
happened. This started getting more and more. Once he realized he could do this to me and he realized he could hang out with me and that I was an okay guy, he got a little too comfortable with it. And this started becoming a regular thing where I was losing so much sleep. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. I gotta have sleep. But I remember him, 2, 3 in the morning knocking on the window going, hey, are you awake? And I'm like, no, I'm sleeping. That's what people do at night. And he's like,
Right.
I couldn't sleep. And I'm like, well, I could. He's like, hey, you want to go hang out for a little bit? I'm like, oh boy. And I didn't want to say no and be rude. So I'm like, okay. But this became a chronic thing. We just started becoming a regular. He knew he could do it. He knew I was on the ranch, and this just became regular.
Right.
I wound up spending a lot of time in the last couple of years before the ranch closed with him and getting to know him better and better. He is very proper. He is very intelligent. He was very methodical, very business oriented, but he had a side to him once he was just you and him,
Yep.
and he opened up and started just being a normal guy, which he was, but you just didn't see it very often. I learned that he was just like an average guy, just like you and me, and he could tell jokes, some of the funniest jokes ever. He had a great sense of humor.
Right.
Some of the stuff he said was so off the charts, potty mouth, trucker mouth. He had that side to him where he could, if he felt comfortable and he wanted to tell a joke, it was like I said, you wouldn't tell those jokes to anybody today.
Right.
He was a lot like Elizabeth Taylor that way because Elizabeth Taylor was that way.
Oh
She had a
yeah.
trucker mouth and
Yeah.
a potty mouth, and she would say stuff that my mouth would hit the floor. Um, but hanging out with Michael, some of the things that came out of his mouth, I would just go, I cannot believe you just said that. And he goes, it's okay, you can laugh. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable even laughing at that joke. It was funny, but I was afraid to laugh. I'm like, I
Right.
don't know if that's okay. But, I got to know him better and I realized he was just a regular guy inside that shell. He had a facade that he had to put on for the world. Inside, he was just a normal human being. He really was just
Wow.
like you and me. I mean, I remember one day he had this massive teepee. You know about the teepee,
Sure.
the Indian teepee.
Yeah,
He had this like,
out by the water park.
yeah, by the waterfall and all that. This thing's like 80 feet tall and like 40 feet round. It's massive. It's like a teepee on steroids
Right.
with a fire pit in the middle of it and the whole 9 yards. And he's like, hey, you want to go into the teepee? I'm like, it's 3 in the morning, Michael. And he's like, just for a little bit. And he was the king of just for 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah, well, it was always 4 or 5 hours. And I'm like, I got to get up in 4 hours.
Right.
Uh, but, I enjoyed his company. I hope he enjoyed my company. I don't know. I think he did. He needed somebody at that point, and I was there. And I wasn't there because I was, you know, a friend. I was there because I was just there. And it just
Well,
happened that way. It
right.
organically happened. And so we went hanging out at the teepee, and I never even thought of this till years later. In fact, after he passed is when it really hit me. He goes, "Do you mind if I sing and dance? Would that be weird?" I'm like, "It's your teepee, it's your home. I mean, I'm just a guest here. I'm just here, you know. Have at it, you know." And I didn't even think
Right.
anything of it. And he starts just singing and dancing in the middle of his teepee, and I'm sitting there, and it's 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I'm looking at this, and my brain is going, "Is this real? Am I really sitting here?" I mean, I had to like kind of pinch myself a few times. I'm like, this is weird. Like I'm literally watching Mr. Jackson, Michael Jackson, the great Michael Jackson, singing and dancing without any background music, no nothing, just him wailing and singing and dancing. And I'm thinking,
Do
and
you
I'd seen
remember?
him sing and dance on videos, and I'd seen him sing and dance while he was
Sure.
recording and working. But now I'm like by myself having my own personal concert with Michael Jackson.
Do you
Huh?
remember what he sang?
No, I don't remember what he's saying.
Okay.
It could have been. I would be lying if I told you. It could have been Billie Jean. It could have been one of any of the great songs he sang. Maybe
Right.
it's something never even recorded. I don't even know.
You're
I
gonna
just
drive.
remember being really late at night and me being exhausted out of my mind and sitting there, kind of a little agitated that I'm in this situation at that point because I'm so tired. Not because I was mad at him or anything. I just gone like, how am I? What am I? What is going on here?
What am I
Which is,
doing?
what am I doing? And then I'm like, my brain went. I'm literally listening to Michael Jackson sing without any background, and it was amazing. And
Right.
his move, his body movements, and like again, I'd seen him do choreographed music and dance and singing before, but that was a different situation. There was hundreds of other people involved there or whatever
Sure.
when we're filming, and it's all choreographed, and there's a director and everybody's the producers, and there's always people coming and doing makeup and hair. But now I'm just him and me at 3 in the morning, and it didn't really hit me that bad until after he passed away, and then it hit me, and I went,
Hmm.
that is, I'm sure I'm not the only person that got to experience that, but I'm probably one of a few that experienced that, and it's still so surreal and ingrained in my brain. There was really a magical moment. Again, even though it wasn't even my type of music or anything. Like
Right.
I never thought much about his music and his dancing, even though I knew he was talented, incredibly talented. It just never really crossed my mind that I was going to be ever in my life sitting there watching this happen. His antics and his little goofy games that he would do. He was a trickster. He was a prankster. He loved pranking people. Loved prank. I remember we were on, uh, I think it was Black and White, and he was pranking. What was his name? The director.
Oh, Landis, John Landis.
Landis. Didn't care for the man, but he was pranking Landis, him and Macaulay, right in front of
Right.
everybody, and it was pretty funny. But I didn't think much of that. But he was a big prankster, and so another story I could tell you. He did this to a few different people. I'm not the only one that he did this to. I knew that this happened, and I'd heard from other people that he'd done this. But I get a call one day. It's me and a limited staff, and there was only one or two security guards and me on the property. And I hear on the radio that there's guests at the ranch.
Right.
So they always, the security go, guests are on the ranch, so there's people there and to not misbehave. I mean, we
Right.
didn't misbehave anyway, but there's guests on the ranch. Make sure your stuff's done, make sure you're dressed properly, make sure you're not doing things that are not supposed to be seen by guests.
Right.
And I knew there was a bunch of children there. There's some kids, some families, and some kids came. And I get a call on the radio saying, the owner, because that's the way that's the way it was done then.
Yep.
Didn't say Mr. Jackson or Michael. They would say the owner needs assistance wherever that would be, at the house or whatever. And I'm just an elephant guy and an animal guy, so I have nothing to do with grounds maintenance or anything. But when it was a limited staff, sometimes the security guards would say, "Hey, owner needs something. Can you help? Can you respond?" So I get a call on the radio. Owner needs assistance to a possible rattlesnake, and he's got guests. So I'm like, well, that's something up my wheelhouse. I better go deal with that, address that,
Right.
because I handle rattlesnakes, handle lots of snakes. So, that was okay. Okay, whatever. So when they said he's over at the water park, which the water park was actually, and you know this, but the people that don't, your guests that don't know this, um, he had built a water park that was a bunch of jet propulsioned nozzle fire hose type things that were on swivels, like you'd see it like maybe at a water park. And these things would shoot 200-300 feet with great pressure and great accuracy. And you could soak somebody down. It was a super soaker on massive steroids, and there was
Right.
many stations, and it was like a war zone. It was like this. You had all these forts, and each fort had its own water cannons, and you could shoot these water cannons, like I said, 200-300 feet and blast people. A really amazing thing. I mean,
Right.
my brain still doesn't wrap around that thing. But anyway, when I heard it was at the water park, my brain went, I feel like I'm being set up.
Yeah.
Don't know about this. I've heard this story before, things that go on at the water park.
Right.
So I go to the water park with my feelers up, my radar on, and I hear Mr. Jackson say, "There's a rattlesnake over here. You got to come get it, please. I got guests. There's young people here." And I have my snake catching gear. I have a bucket and I have my snake tongs and a snake hook. So I hear the kids giggling. I'm like, yep, I'm getting pranked. I'm getting so. And
Yep.
then I hear Mr. Jackson giggling like a little kid. And I'm like, yep. And they're like, he's a little farther over. You about another 10 feet. It's right over there. And I walked right into it. And about I hear go. And all of a sudden I am getting like five of these jet nozzles blasting me from every angle. And
From
I hear
every
everybody laugh
direction.
like little kids. And here I am, the top of the prank, and I'm soaking wet. And then I guess at that point, my face probably was not looking that great. I was a little frustrated, but I was trying
Right.
not to show. But he says, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I want to fix this. The maids will get your clothes dried up. We'll get you some fresh clothes and some towels." And they did. They came running with towels and fresh clothes, and they treated me really well. They had to make me some really nice, I don't remember what it was, but I think pizza. Oh, we want some pizza. We'll get some pizza. He was trying to make nicey nicey
Right.
after he knew he had made me very angry, but I was, he still was my boss, and I still sucked it up, and it was funny. It just
Of
wasn't funny
course.
to me at the moment, but it was a funny prank. It really was. But I'm trying to point out he was a major prankster. He
Yeah.
loved to play tricks and jokes on people. So that was that story. So yeah, he was a prankster, very funny guy. He had a great sense of humor.
Let me just throw a couple words at you or locations and just kind of tell me off the top of your head what you think of.
Okay.
Um, the giraffes, the giraffe enclosure. I mean, that was one of my
Well,
favorite places on the ranch.
it was attached to the primate building, and the primate building had orangutans and and chimpanzees in it. And then right outside that, there was another building that had the giraffes, but it was kind of somewhat attached. Well, I shouldn't say it's attached, but it was right next to each other.
Right.
Um, Really nice little facility. Excuse me, nice facility with some beautiful giraffes. Giraffes are wonderful. Michael loved giraffes. He loves all animals, but he was big into the giraffes. Um, Really neat little setup, though. You can go up
I
on the
yeah,
top
that
deck, and
deck. Yeah.
giraffe would stick its head right up on you and rub its head on you. And of course, giraffes are, you know this because you've met the giraffes, but they stink, especially the males. They have a really
The tongues. They get
the
that.
tongues, the big long blue tongues. And
Yeah.
I worked a bunch of giraffes. I actually used Princess was one of the young giraffes. We took her on a Janet Jackson music video, and for the life of me, I can't tell you the name of the music video because I've forgotten what it's called. Sorry.
That's all right.
I worked on a few things with Janet. I actually worked with Janet and Tupac on another movie, and I can't remember the name of that one either, but your audience probably knows what it's called.
I'm sure they're yelling right now.
Way back in the
Um,
early 90s.
the reptile barn.
Reptile Barn was a really neat place. That was an old barn that was on the ranch. It was an old hay barn. It was huge. It was old redwood with a metal roof. It was a gorgeous building, but it was old. Mr. Jackson was very fond of that building, and he had it completely remodeled from the ground up. And then they built inside of it. You walk in and you wouldn't expect it because it's just a hay barn on the outside. You'd think it's
Right.
just a hay barn on the inside. And you'd open the doors and there'd be this amazing animal sounds coming out of the speakers, this incredible surround sound system, which I believe you had. Did you do that one?
Yeah, I built all of that.
So amazing 3D, three-dimensional sound bouncing off everywhere, birds chirping and crickets and frogs ribbiting and sounds of snakes slithering. And then you have some music in the background, and you walk in, and it was just like you walked into a zoo facility. It was just this amazing interior of this barn that was just transformed. It was really wild, and it was full of cobras and giant anacondas. There was right outside. There were some giant gators. In fact, one of the big gators was named Big Al after Big Al.
Really?
Huge gator. Oh yeah, you didn't know
I,
that?
I'm learning so much from you. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of the big gators. There was two big gators. There was the female and the male. The big male was Big Al. He was giant. I mean, just a massive animal.
I
In
didn't
fact,
know
we had
that.
to wrangle him a few times in and out of there because we were cleaning the pool, and me and a couple other guys had to get him out of the pool. And boy, whew, he was a handful. But
I
yeah,
think Violet tells some story. I can't remember the details, but something about she had to kind of help uh
yeah, yep. We
gather.
had to help us a few times with certain things, with the cobras and all that stuff, and she was not thrilled about that.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, we had an owl at one point, a great horned owl, and I remember having to have Violet hold the door for me as the owl was getting very angry with me. But yeah, we would constantly pull Violet into these situations. I don't know how she wound up in that situation, but when we
It was
needed help, we
it was
we
all
grab her.
hands on deck.
You remember the tigers, the two tigers?
Yeah. W-
I'm trying to remember for the life of me now their names. I gave them names, and then because I raised those two tigers, and they changed the names, and I'm trying to remember. Uh, Thriller was one of the tigers. I can't remember. I apologize. I'm having a brain fart.
And
The female
I
was.
don't where did they keep the tigers? Was there a
Well,
separate
the tigers
enclosure?
were. Yeah, no, the tigers wanted. We wound up using remember there was wolves. There was white wolves, and there was that cage there, and then Kimba's cage. We actually had the tigers in Kimba's cage, and we made it bigger for the tigers.
Okay. The amusement park. I mean, just what are your memories of walking through the park?
Amazing memories. I mean, he used to have family day for all he treated his employees so well. He had family days and parties for the employees all the time, all the time. And I was always invited to the family days. Um, and we'd get to ride all the rides and have all the free candy and the free popcorn and use the theater. And he just opened the park to everybody. And riding all those rides were great. The bumper cars were amazing. He had these little go-kart things that were fun. He had the Viking ship that would swing you
Yeah.
all around and crab spider thing that would spin you. I used to call it the vomitron because they didn't want to vomit. But I get to bring my daughter and my family there. My daughter was like, I remember my daughter started coming with me when she was 6 months old to
Wow.
Neverland, and that was the one thing is Mr. Jackson was very gracious that way. I mean, I was just an employee, but even on non-employee family days, there was times I had to bring my daughter because I had nobody to watch her, and he
Right.
just kids and he's like, yeah, bring her, no problem. And I'd get to bring my daughter. She got to come a few times. She doesn't remember because like last time she was there, she was only 4.
Hmm.
But um, yeah, that was really cool. And he was
Hmm.
just very gracious, very generous person to so many people. I mean, I remember him bringing children that had They were on they get their final wish of, getting to come. I mean, they were basically passing away, these kids,
Sure.
and he bring these children that were in terminal condition to the ranch all the time and let them just run the park. And kids were burn victims. You remember Dave? Dave?
I never
Do you
met
remember
Dave. I've talked to Al about Dave. I know who he is, but I never met him.
Dave? He's passed, I understand. He was a
Yeah.
kid that his father was a horrible monster, burned him intentionally.
Yeah.
Uh,
Horrible.
crisp, really bad injury. And Dave used to come to the ranch all the time and get to do whatever, just hang out and have a good time. And Mitt Jackson did such amazing things for kids that were, you know, less fortunate and
Right.
injured and ill. I mean, I don't even remember the back of the theater had hospital beds in it.
Yeah.
That he literally, it was life support systems were in those rooms that these
Right.
kids could the final moments sitting and watching Disney movies in this theater.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible. And those are the things that people don't talk about, Mr. Jackson. I was not his friend, I was not his fan, and it still kind of breaks my heart to see the damage that people did to him, to his name and his good will. Nobody ever talked about the good things he did. They only
Right.
talked about the mess that he made. And that's the sad thing about Hollywood and film and celebrity is that they only remember the things you did that they wanted that they can hold against you. It's just weird.
They
Um,
the way I
they don't ever
describe it
talk
is that
about
they
the
love to
beauty.
build people up, and then they love to smash them down.
They did that to him. I mean, they did that to him. I mean, I remember when he was as golden could be. There was the golden child. They loved him, and as soon as he didn't fit their narrative, they crushed him, or they tried to crush him.
Right.
I think he was kind of unstoppable, but they tried to make a mockery of his good name and his good faith.
Right.
Uh, it was really heartbreaking to see that. It was really they
Oh,
just really were cruel, absolutely cruel to him. And I just remember I saw all the wonderful things he did, and they never talked about those things. They only talked about things that they disliked.
right. Right.
And so I learned from, that that's just the way Hollywood is, or the film industry, or the music industry. It can be pretty ruthless.
Yeah. Well,
Sad. And
let me ask one or two final questions. What do you remember about Christmas? Christmas at Neverland.
well, I remember it was very sparkly. Lots of lights. Lots of lights. That place, and even when it wasn't Christmas, he loved to light that place up like it was Christmas. I mean,
Right.
I remember you could see that thing from an airplane from a mile up. That thing lit up like a yeah. I mean, he loved to light that ranch up. But boy, Christmas was a lot of razzle dazzle and a lot of lights. A lot like Disneyland. I mean, he would
Yeah.
fix it up a lot like Disneyland. That's what I remember, and especially the train station, just really done up.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And the horse-drawn carriage and the whole thing.
Horse-drawn carriages, yep, yep. The Clydesdale and all that, and the white horses, yep. We did spend a lot of time helping hooking that stuff up and doing carriage rides. And he loved to give the guests rides, especially Elizabeth Taylor loved to go on carriage rides. Very, very magical there. And there was the flamingos. I don't remember the flamingos. I was very involved
Yeah.
with. That was another reason I was constantly coming to the ranch because we'd have the coyotes or foxes try to get on the flamingo island and get the flamingos, or the flamingos would fly off the flamingo island, and I'd get called 2, 3 in the morning. We got a flamingo off the island. This was chronic, this problem, and I'd have to drive 3.5 hours each way. And I'm got to the point where I'm not going home. I'm staying in the ranch. I'm not going to go
Wow.
back. So that was one thing that was fun. We were always releasing ducks. Michael loved exotic ducks like wood ducks and shell ducks. He had these incredible duck collections on the pond. The big pond by the house was huge,
So
and
so
so
wait,
we're
what? Oh, so those were brought in.
those were brought in. Yeah, yeah. Those were not natural. Those were not wild ducks.
I
Those were
didn't.
brought
I
in.
mean, I didn't know any of the. I mean,
Yeah,
all of us had so much stuff we were doing,
I was
and
constantly picking up ducks everywhere. Like, okay, the airport's going to have 400 ducks at 3 p.m. Make sure you get up. Not that many. I'm lying. It was like 50 ducks, but it was a lot of ducks. And I remember going and wrangling ducks and driving up to Neverland all the time. It was kind of funny. And then
what?
the children, I watched the children grow up when they were young. I haven't seen them in a long, long time.
Right.
So I watched them growing up as little children. I mean, that was another thing that Michael would do. Um, he had a woman that was a nanny, wonderful lady. I can't remember her name for the life of me. She was an amazing lady. She was treated those children so well, like their mother.
Right.
Um, but I'm having a loss of her name. Old age is fun. But we were always, so Michael, one thing Michael liked to do is he'd like to uh, make sure when his guests showed up, he wanted them to see the animals around the house. And that was his big deal. Is I want the elephants and the giraffe and the camel and the tigers and the
Wow.
snake. Everything needs, and the llamas and the alpacas. I want them around the ranch where my guests are here.
Yep.
So I want in the morning to see them walking around outside the ranch. So we always have an hour or two that we'd have not have to, but we would bring the animals and let them hang out. I mean, it was good for the animals anyway because they got out of their cages or out of their corrals and they get to go for a walk. And we would have them hanging around the house, and the guests would show up and see all these animals around the house. It was
Yep.
like like Dr. Doolittle. Um, and so he had the small children at that point, and he was constantly busy. And sometimes the baby or the nanny was not there at the time, and he'd bring the kids out to see the animals on the grass, and also get a phone call, an important phone call. And he'd look at me, and I'm like, "Please don't do it, please don't do it." He'd go like, "Just 4 minutes, I'll be right back. Just watch him." I'm like, "I am literally sitting here with a camel on a lead or an elephant sitting here, and now I've got two toddlers on the ground right by my feet.
Right.
Like, it's just 3 or 4 minutes." That was famous for saying, that was like the same as
We'll be
saying,
back in an
"Yes,
hour.
I'll be back." It meant an hour minimum every
Yep.
time.
Yep.
And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." And he's okay. "Yeah, the nanny will be here in 2 minutes." And I knew that was not going to be the case either.
Right.
So that became a
Hey,
chronic thing. We watched those kids a lot on the lawn, and it's pretty funny. Just
her name was Grace. I just remembered it. Grace.
that was the name, Grace. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I should
Yeah.
have remembered. It's an easy name. Grace was an amazing woman.
She was so sweet.
Here's this. I loved her to death. She was such a good person, such a great mother figure to those children.
Now I
Um,
have to tell you a story because
yeah,
I know that you and I bumped into each other 100 times. It's just we
I'm
both.
sure of it. I'm absolutely
But
sure of it.
I was up there for a family day. I think it was at the end of the history album, and
Uh,
there were a bunch of us that went up. And at that time, I have four daughters, but at that time we had two.
uh-huh.
And we had my wife and our two daughters were eating breakfast, I think in the house. And
Yeah.
we're eating breakfast, looking out, and here comes someone that I have a feeling it was you bringing out. Wasn't there a baby elephant or two baby elephants?
Well, Baba and Ali, when they came there, they were very young. They were only 2 years old. They were very
Okay.
small. Yeah.
It may have been you or one of the trainers brought these two elephants. And my youngest at the time, my youngest daughter Hannah, we all went out to see the elephants. And Hannah has loved animals since she was, 2 days old. And
Uh-huh.
I still remember her, with those elephants and the trainer. And
Yeah.
and she went on. She's gone on to become a dolphin trainer. And she's
That's
been,
amazing. That's very cool.
yeah, she's
Awesome.
been working with the
Yeah,
animals her whole
I
life.
think it's David Polk that you're thinking of. David Polk was there when, I mean, I was in and out, but I bet you it was David Polk that was
It
there
might have
when
been. And
David Polk
and
is a
and
good
and
friend. I've known David Polk for 35 years, if not more. And then there was also Jose Zapata, who was also a big deal as far as the animals and the ranch and the operations of the animal operations.
well, and
He
Mark.
too. Mark Biancanello, who's unfortunately deceased.
Yeah.
Mark was he was big. He was really big with the reptiles as well.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mark
there's
was
a
the
lot of really wonderful
sweetest.
people that worked around Mr. Jackson. I've met some really amazing people over the years over there, and yeah,
Well, and
there's
and
some.
that's something. And you and I talked about that the other day. And I'm not saying the place was perfect. There were politics and egos and
Oh,
things
it's
like that.
everywhere. Everywhere you
But
go, you're
that's
going to see
everywhere.
one.
But for the
Yeah.
most part,
Mhm.
Violet and I have talked about this. They were just hardworking people living in Los Olivos or
Yep.
Santa Maria, and here they
Yep.
are having a job at Michael Jackson's ranch, and they were
Yeah.
most of them were good, hardworking people.
Oh yeah, like Stacy. There was a gal named Stacy over. There were so many people, especially females over there. I could give you 10 names, but Stacy, that woman worked herself to death over there taking care of the elephants, and she was 100% committed. There were so many people that were so committed to the ranch and the animals, and it's sad because a lot of them were so crushed and brokenhearted when the ranch closed down. I mean,
Yeah,
it wasn't just Michael that damaged. It damaged so many people. There was
yeah,
hundreds of people that lost their job, their career, their love of that ranch, and
right.
their relationship
Right.
with the animals and Mr. Jackson. And it was really hard. It was painful for a lot of people when
Hmm.
when that went down.
Quick thoughts. We've kind of talked about this, just the closing of the ranch. You said you were there.
I was there. Yes, it was. I don't remember all who was there, but I remember that definitely Jose Zapata was there. I think his brother was there. Joe Marcus was there. Um, I don't remember who else was there, and I was there. I might have had Ken Mordigian with me, but we had loaded up a few more things that were not to go with the ranch that needed to leave without the ranch. We loaded up some trucks and trailers, and we were finally closing the front gate and putting a chain around it.
Wow.
And I said something that kind of rubbed everybody the wrong way, and I didn't mean it in a bad way, but I just felt it in my body and my bones my spidey senses were telling me that I was correct, and I said it, and it made everybody mad. But what I said was, I think Mr. Jackson won't last more than a couple years after this. This is going to break his heart.
Mm.
I was a little wrong. I think it took 3 or 4 years. I don't remember the exact timeline.
Right.
He was gone not too long after that, and I truly believe that that was soul crushing for him.
Yeah.
He spent his life building that thing, and that was his baby, and I think that was soul crushing. I think and I'm not saying that's the only thing that what caused his death, but he was in a lot of pain from a lot of different things, and that I think was a really bad blow for him. That was he had a real low.
Yeah.
His children are everything. His children were his world and his life, and that was the most important thing with him, and I know that was number one. But his ranch that he built and his animals, and that the world he built around himself to protect himself. He had all these things because he couldn't go to a movie theater. He couldn't go to Disneyland. That he had to shut the whole park down to go to Disneyland. So he had to build his world around him to protect himself and his family. And they destroyed that. They took that from him. Something he spent his whole life building, or not his whole life, but a good portion of his life building.
Sure.
And massive money went in, and heartache went into that whole thing. And to have that all be tore away or taken away from him. I said those things. I didn't say it as I was wanting that to happen. I just said,
no, I get it. It's
going to be something that is going to destroy him. Maybe not overnight, but over a short period of time. And I was just a little off by a year or two. So
all right.
it's
Last one, and then hopefully this one will be a little bit lighter. Sometimes when I talk to people that worked at Neverland, I ask them, "What's your takeaway when you spent that much time with Michael and at the ranch? What do you look back and what did you take away from that experience?"
Gosh, there's so many things, but one of the things I would say again, and we just kind of touched on it a little bit, is that even the most wonderful things in the world can be destroyed. And even somebody who's powerful and such high celebrity and high and with the financial wherewithal to build such an amazing life or situation or place to live, it could be all taken from you in a blink of an eye. And people are cruel. Unfortunately, humans are cruel. We can be very cruel.
Be grateful for what you have.
The man's art is at its highest when he's passed away. And Mr. Jackson made billions over his lifetime, and he did very well. But they all forgot him and acted like he was garbage up until the very last day. And then when his last breath was taken, his estate and his collections and everything he did became worth billions overnight. Again, when you're a celebrity and you're wealthy, people think their lives are great. They're not. They have lots of pain and heartache. And just because they have all that money and all that fame and celebrity does not make their life great. They still suffer like you and me.
Right.
So I guess my point is, it doesn't matter how much money or fame you have, your life isn't any better from it. And you have no friends or very few real friends to trust, because when you have money, everybody wants to be your friend. And most of those people are not genuine. So that's my 2 cents that I can give you.
Nice. Hayden, an absolute pleasure. Go have a wonderful date night with your wife. Tell her I'm sorry for taking so much time.
Oh, no, not at all.
And
it's nice to talk to people that really know the stories or know what I'm even talking about. I tell some people stories and they look at me like it doesn't make sense to them. So you're a few people I can share those stories with that understand.
You're very generous with your time. Thank you, my friend. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
In the Studio, the podcast is produced by Maddie Sundberg. Theme music performed by Buddy Nuanez. Artwork by Andy Healy. Studio electronics provided by Golden Age Project. And studio acoustics provided by Acoustic Sciences Corporation. My name is Brad Sundberg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us in the studio.